Well, good day to you, Scott Baker. We get to talk about gratefulness again.
Again, it is the season, and here we are on November 28th, 2025. Time for another edition of Lead Better. Thanks to all of you for joining us live or later. And we are at field note number 1632, and as Mikey indicated, gratitude, again, the topic. This one, a little bit unusual. The title is Be Careful Not to Weaponize Gratitude. And I think, and we had heard that this field note was coming, and I kept thinking, how would you weaponize gratitude? But then when it's revealed in the field note, you go, oh yeah, I see that all the time.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's like when you think about how coercive leaders work, man, they weaponize just about anything, don't they? Even something as great as gratitude.
Yes. So the heart of this one, and you'll all know it, you'll recognize it as soon as we say it. You should be grateful for this.
Right.
Parents would say it, bosses will say it, people get, it's like you don't know, I'm sensing some resentment or ingratitude, and I'm going to make sure that I'm rubbing your nose in this. How blessed you are that I have given you my resources, my time, my attention, my training, this environment, the coffee maker down in the break room, whatever it is, there's going to be an implication that like you're not being grateful enough. So I'm demanding gratitude from you.
Right.
And we would all think, well, that's just horrible. And yet it happens all the time.
It sure does, right? And it's maybe a lot of leaders use it because they feel like they're at their wit's end, like they don't know how to articulate it otherwise. They, maybe it comes from a spot where they feel like someone else they're not getting the recognition that they want, right? And I wonder if it happens up and down, right? So there's this famous scene in Mad Men where Peggy and Don are having a bit of a tiff.
Okay.
And you can tell that in the lead up to this particular argument that they're having, that Peggy is kind of considering leaving the Sterling.
Boy, okay, you've gone into the detailed files of the Mad Men Wikipedia here, right?
But the actual quote is actually more famous because she just wanted a little bit of gratitude. She wanted to hear good job, right? And Don said famously, "That's what the money is for." Right. So in his defense of saying, I don't need to say thank you, I don't need to express, we don't have that kind of relationship. That's why I pay you what I pay you. Right. And in Don saying that, he's basically saying, like, I've given you everything that you wanted for. You as a woman actually don't belong here in Madison Avenue the way that men have access.
The Mad Men
to.
do. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Right. And so if you're looking for like some equal seat at the table, you're not going to get, like, there was so much that was wrapped up in there. And I've never felt like Peggy was being coercive in the way that we're talking about leaders shouldn't do that. But that's what she was. She was like, why can't you just say thank you? And he's like, that's what the money's for, right? So
well, here's a question. We do kind of come to the table sometimes with expectations, especially in workplaces, and that would be a case, here, where all the people, we're a family, and you'd be like, are we? Like, is that what we're doing here? I remember reading a book. This was a long time ago, so I might get pieces of this wrong, but I believe it was by Michael J. Fox's father-in-law. It would be Tracy Pollan's dad, was a financial advisor. And I read this book, again, it was like 20 years ago. And he had as a financial advisor to people, he had a very distinct sort of way of saying, your job is your job. And in fact, your real calling in life might not be the job that you're doing. It might be things you're doing outside of the job. And so we come together for very specific reasons to get, for a particular mission to fulfill a product or service that would be needed or useful to people. And if we get along and we're in our work environment, which we spend a lot of our time with those people more than even our families, great. But there might not need to be, I'm not defending Don Draper to be like this, like, have I hugged you enough lately? Have I given you enough compliments lately? Now, we do know that good leaders know that we're in teams of human beings. And the more that you understand that and treat people like human beings, the better everybody is going to get the work done that needs to be done. They're going to become better people. You're going to become a better leader. Great. But my question in this is, underlying this leader's resentment of saying, like, you should be grateful for this. Have we developed a culture where we're just too sensitive in every direction, both from the leader and from the people on the team?
I don't know that leaders, when they say this, are doing it from a growing sensitivity, right? So I understand what you're saying, but I think this existed prior to, if you're going to accuse our society of becoming weak, I think prior to that, this kind of manipulation already existed. So I don't know that it would be a symptom of a weakening society. I think it's
right.
just.
I mean, and certainly the emotional posture of demanding the reverence or demanding the gratitude is as old as humanity. I mean, you can go back and look at statues and pyramids and everything else and being like, give me my due. Right.
Yes.
And in sort of an Osmandius, kind of way.
It's very much like the expression of respect. Like respect, we all know respect is earned. And so if you're not getting gratitude, there's the red flag that says you're not respected. But you can't, I mean, it seems ridiculous for someone to demand respect. They might demand that you not use those words. They might demand that you not treat them in a certain way. But demanding respect is the same kind of thing. It's your weird way of trying to pull respect out of someone by demanding that they use, gracious words. And so you're never really going to get what you want.
Well, and this can happen in unexpected ways. Like I had a conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and it was a principled conversation, but it kind of, the message coming back to me was that there's probably a respect issue, but it was, you're not being grateful for what the other person felt like they had been expressing. And I felt that what they were expressing was actually wrong.
Right.
And so, I was saying, well, let's talk about the value, here, because we do have a belief in admired leadership around talk about the values and not particular incidents and put things into the future. And so they're like, well, you're being ungrateful. And so we unpacked that for a while, because I was like, I don't want to be ungrateful if I should be grateful, right?
Yeah.
And we should probably go around with a general posture of gratefulness, no doubt. But the question would be then, if a leader is doing this, well, then what? All right. So the field note is saying a leader could weaponize gratitude, and they could be saying, any people would give their right arm for the opportunity that you've had to be here.
Right.
And you say, well, what do you say back?
Yeah. You cut your arm off? Like there's no right response.
Yeah. So, and I don't know that the field note really builds that part out so much of the response of the person who's on the receiving end of this weaponization. But that's a really good question, right?
Yeah.
Because you have an opportunity in the response to create a different environment. Because obviously, if a leader is actually expressing gratitude themselves generally, they're probably going to receive more gratitude.
Yes.
And we talked about that yesterday in terms of the gratefulness being sort of contagious in a way.
I can't imagine. Yeah,
if you're demanding respect and gratitude all the time, that's going to be contagious too in a bad way.
Yeah. And it's always going to be a hot situation too. So it's good that this question that you're asking is great, because you need to come up with some phraseology that can be a handle for you in the middle of these red line kind of moments. And so when say you should be just grateful, like guarantee you're in a moment where you're at the precipice of an argument or you're in the middle of an argument, right? So when someone says that, there's probably an ego that is being dinged, right? There's probably some sort of lack of respect that they're feeling. And so you have to, like, I would have the tendency to be like, okay, let me just give you let me massage you just a second so that you can feel like I respect you or respect the
now,
situation.
You mean metaphorically?
Yes.
Like I'm not giving you an actual massage. It's like I'm going to massage your emotions here by attending to this thing that you're demanding.
Well, it's important that you're pushing back on this, Scott, because you are the kind of person who would push back in this kind of situation, right? You're kind of low tolerance for that type of thing. Like you don't care to give somebody their flowers in the moment who don't deserve their flowers. Where I would have the tendency from a de-escalation point of view to I'll just throw them a couple flowers and then I'll work. So you might feel like that's too manipulative for you to do. And so your character and values kind of wouldn't allow you to do that. Whereas like I lean into that kind of a thing. And you might just view it as so manipulative that it's a violation of values.
Yeah. Right.
But it's like right in my values to actually step back for a second and be like, let me actually give real praise to you for a second, where it might feel inauthentic to you because maybe you couldn't make that transition as quick, right? There's a lot going on in the middle of the heat of that moment where I'd be fine with it where you wouldn't be fine with it, but both of ours are respected positions.
Well, yeah. Well, and maybe temperamentally, and Mikey speaking that we've talked in the past that like if you looked at a big five, sort of aspect in personality, one of the subcharacteristics of I'm blanking on it now, but politeness and compassion are sort of subcategories that underlie how we operate in terms of agreeableness. Right? That's the main category in the big five. And so and I'm fairly high in compassion, but I'm low in politeness. Now that doesn't mean I'm not mannerly. It just means that like I could be the person brought before the king and inside the palace and told to say, to sort of explain exactly why I was wrong. I'm probably not going to like say something that's not true. Right. Now, I might not say all the truth, and I think you can praise things. You can say to somebody, I'm grateful for this, and when you did this is what that meant to me. And I think that's a larger your posture. And I do think that then the point I was trying to kind of get to was that I think that you can take the person that's feeling this heat from the leader who's weaponizing gratitude, and then say, all right, well, what's my way of as a leader, you're always trying to make people in situations better, including your leader. Yeah. Now, you can't go wrong and be like, I'm here to make you better, right? So I'm going to talk about like, you're weaponizing gratitude here. It does take a degree of subtlety. We watch, global diplomats do this all the time when they're dealing with a leader that that they hate, and yet they'll praise them for this or that, and then they come to some agreement or whatever. That's going to happen. Yeah. But I think that there are ways to kind of use this idea of saying, all right, you're saying this, so before I start punching back, I'm going to try to explore it, right? And so I'm not going to necessarily say something I don't believe, but I'm going to say, well, let's talk about that. Right. So what's the thing that you're really upset here about? And a lot of times, if you just ask enough questions, they talk themselves out of it.
Right. Now, we're taking on more responsibility here than the field note is actually directing us to.
Possibly
right?
So, yeah.
Because the field note is written to the leader who might be using this tactic, and they probably don't have people in their life who are calling them out on it.
Yeah.
We're going the extra step saying, what if we're the people who need to call out our leaders?
Yes,
on it?
right.
This is the right way to be able to do it. At the end of the day, the admonition is pretty straightforward. Like, don't do that. Like, if you see... you should be grateful for your job starts to come out of your mouth, don't say it, because there's never been a time where that's a good thing to be saying, right?
Yeah. Well, look, we talked, went through a couple of good examples yesterday, and I think this is one to be mindful about. And I think in the end, the thing that we and our team had talked about in another environment earlier in this week was the thing that I brought up about David McCullough saying that when you don't learn history, that's ingratitude. So one of the ways of saying, well, what does gratitude look like is we can all know what ingratitude looks like. And the learning from history issue is not being like, I'm going to go back to my ancestors or to the founding fathers and say, I'm so grateful for you. No, it's actually putting into practice the lessons that people have invested their lives into you over generations. That's even true in organizations. Yeah. So part of this idea and many of the behaviors in admired leadership are, how do I tell you that you've influenced me in a certain way? How do I take seriously what you've done? And if somebody says, you're being ungrateful, I'm saying, you know what? I've learned this from you and this from you and this from you and this from you and this from you. And you'll notice that in the projects that I've done over the last 3 years, I've really changed my entire approach to this, my entire approach to this. One of the most powerful things was this. So whether or not I'm saying it in language that you're hearing, it's more important that I'm demonstrating. In fact, that I think in a way, that fundamentally, that is the deepest sign of gratitude to anybody or anything, is the faithful practice of what you learned or gained from that relationship. Mm-hmm. And so that actually is a muscular posture. It's not just a mental posture of like, I'm so grateful. It's here's how I'm demonstrating this. Yes. So you can have this conversation for a leader who's demanding gratitude. I think if you actually just say, well, let's talk about this, because I think I am pretty appreciative of what you've invested here. So let's see where we're at. And I think the deeper conversation will probably lead to deeper understanding.
I think this is kind of profound, Scott, what you just said. We were talking yesterday about Ted Lasso and why it is that he's such a liked character. And we thought that, he's a grateful person. You just said,
joyful.
What does gratefulness look like? I think it starts with curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really, really does. And then what you just said is like, if your curiosity is able to circle back to the person who made you curious, and you're reflecting on what you've learned, like even without saying the words thank you, that it just exudes gratefulness.
For sure.
Right? So the sub skills of stay curious and circle back are great. I love that we got to this in this conversation.
Dynamite. All right, let's do it again tomorrow.
All right, bye now.
See ya.